Hello, you lovely listeners. I'm Amy. Welcome to the Really Good Conversations podcast, where we will delve into the minds of the business people we have met in the process of launching our first card game. We will be uncovering their secrets to success, their biggest mistakes, and sharing the key lessons they have picked up en route. So, if you're looking for an engaging chinwag mixed with business insights and a good pinch of fun, you're in the right place. Let's have a really good conversation. Welcome to the Really Good Conversations podcast. Today I am joined by Michelle Hayes, who is the head of Relationship Counselling at Marriage Care, a UK charity supporting couples through relationship challenges and marriage preparation. With extensive experience in counselling and supervision, Michelle leads a dedicated team to deliver compassionate expert support. Today, Michelle will share her insights on the complexities of modern relationships, the pressures couples face, and how counselling can help build stronger, more fulfilling connections. Welcome to the podcast, Michelle.
Thank you very much, Amy. Really pleased to be here.
Really looking forward to this conversation as well, and probably picking up some tips and insights from my own life. I obviously work with my husband that now, Alex and I have been together, over 20 years, and it will be our 5-year wedding anniversary this year. So yes, we got married just as COVID was kicking off in March 2020. So I don't know if that's a good or a bad omen. I'm not too sure. So we'll dive straight in and go into some of the topics that we're going to discuss today. And my first question is really about, the perfect relationship. Is there really such a thing as a perfect relationship?
Yeah, I think we probably know the answer to that, don't we? I think maybe one of the pressures on relationships is that we think there is. Yeah, certainly if you think about media and film representations of relationships, they look as though they follow a kind of a lovely sort of fairy tale story and process. A typical rom-com or something will be, we fall in love at first sight, then we have a little bump, and then we get back together and it's all bliss. And I think we can have blissful moments in our relationships, but I think it's unlikely that we just stay there, because of course life happens, doesn't it, around the relationship. So even if it's not because of pressures between you, it may be that the other stuff of life. Amy, you mentioned COVID earlier. Who could have predicted that?
Yes.
And that might mean that, even if you are kind of progressing in your relationship and you've reached a point of where you things are really, you get on and you understand each other, an outside challenge might mean that you have to kind of regroup and reassess and hopefully come back together and then proceed as you were. But that can be challenging. So
yes. What are some of the biggest relationship myths that you come across?
Oh, wow. Well, I'll just come up with a couple because I could talk for quite a while about that. I think there are quite a lot of myths around the intimacy aspects of relationships. For example, any interest in that falls off after a certain number of years. That's not necessarily the case, okay? That it has to be really kind of like all guns blazing all the way through the relationship for your relationship to be okay. That's not the case. I think the biggest, though, is that the relationship is that first 18 months, 2 years that people experience. So that really intense period when you're first attracted to somebody, you first start the relationship and, everything, all your hormones are all, buzzing and you can't wait to see each other and it's really intense and all of that. That does calm down actually. And it kind of has to, because if it kept going, we'd probably just burn out. We couldn't physiologically sustain that level of excitement. But I think many people think that means the relationship is deteriorating, or that maybe it's not the right relationship, because they think the relationship is just that intense romantic phase at the beginning. So I think that's probably the biggest myth that I'd like to bust, is that if it starts to feel different, it doesn't necessarily mean that the relationship isn't right.
Yes, because you hear about the lust phase and the honeymoon period and the 7-year itch. I think is a 7-year itch a thing? Is there actually something around that 7-year milestone?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I remember saying to my husband that I was going to have one, 7 years, because I wanted everything I was entitled to. So I remember that the gift that he gave to me at 7 years was some powder, which was supposed to be 7-year itching powder. Um,
Ah.
so I don't know about 7-year itch, but I think it's definitely the case that relationships go through different stages. Yeah. So we've talked about that first intense romantic period, but then we'll come to periods where, for example, we're trying to work out how we can still be different people and yet be together. And that can often be a time when there can be a bit of conflict. I know I've worked with couples who perhaps have met in later life. So this is perhaps a starker example of how that might play out, where two people have been living in completely different lives and they move in together and then they start having arguments. And it's because when they were living in their own place, they had the bathroom like this and the other person wants it like that. Or they, and it's part of that, almost like the norming and storming we talk about in groups, that people working out that how they now the romance bit's over, how do they actually do this business of being together but at the same time being able to be the people that they need to be. So there's a bit of kind of sorting out that needs to happen.
And compromise, I imagine.
Exactly. I mean, I suppose, eventually what you hope you arrive at is an acceptance, not just lustful, passionate love for this partner, but also an acceptance of people, warts and all, as long as we're not talking about anything difficult, but an acceptance that not every day is going to be a Valentine's Day. There are going to be times where we've got to do some sorting out. And I'm always struck when you listen to interviews with people who've been married for a long time, and people always ask them, don't they, what's the secret of your relationship having lasted so long?
Yes.
And they never say sort of rampant sex, do they? Or they always say things like, or even romance, actually. They always say things that sound a bit boring, like compromise, like patience, like tolerance and acceptance, don't they? And I think we really need to hear that, because it doesn't mean that the romance has gone and that there aren't still those other moments, but that's the bread and butter, really, of relationship if you're wanting it to stand the test of time, I think.
Absolutely. What do you think are some of the most common issues that you see couples facing today?
Well, it's quite interesting, Amy, because we analyse all the time what it is that our couples are bringing when they come for counselling. And far ahead, miles ahead of all the issues, is the issue of communication. So I think that's probably something really interesting to you, because obviously you're
absolutely yes.
What you're doing is very communication focused. So a lot of the work our counsellors are doing is around that, how to foster good, constructive communication, how to maintain communication, how to understand why communication goes wrong. So I think that's number one. But then obviously there are topics as well, aren't there? So things like intimacy, things like family, who does what in the house, especially if both people are working, how to juggle all of those things. It's very busy being a family in 2025, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
And money is another big one. And especially at the moment where there's been a lot of pressure, it's well documented, isn't it? It's well reported, the cost of living crisis and those sorts of things, that has a real ripple effect into people's lives. But of course, at the heart of all those issues will be communication. How is it that you're able to communicate about those things?
Yeah. Did you see a rise in people reaching out to the charity through that COVID period? Because I remember hearing, quite a few stories of people who perhaps had separated or were separated because these people were were in a relationship, but they'd go off to work every day, 5 days a week. And then they were suddenly now both at home a lot more than they'd been before. Did you see a change through that period at all?
I mean, post-COVID, our waiting list was really, really long. It really was months-long waits for our services. And I would say that's come down quite significantly. But I think in terms of the impact on people, I think we saw both effects in a way. One, which is that the absence of work relieves the pressure, because sometimes work is a pressure. The fact that one partner maybe has to be away a lot and those sorts of things, and one person feels left with all the family and home associated tasks. So for some people it was a relief of pressure, but you're right, for others it created pressure, because where they were used to that, it was negotiating how do we both cooperate in this space that was primarily my space before COVID. So quite interesting.
you've already touched on, which was going to be my next questions, is about the art of communication in relationships. So how important is communication in relationships? You've highlighted it is the challenge people are coming to you with.
Yeah.
Is it the most important thing in a relationship?
Yeah, I'd say it's everything. Yeah. Because in the end, it's not what happens in life, is it? It's how you manage it. And a lot of how we manage it is around communication.
Yeah.
It's such a big topic that I could talk about it for a long time, but we bring communication habits and patterns into our relationships to start with anyway, that are nothing to do with the relationship. So there's part of sort of having to navigate that and understand perhaps when communication doesn't go so well, why that's happening. And I think by the time people come for couples counselling, Amy, communication is often sort of seized up almost completely. Yeah. So it's a long period of thinking what's going on here and why don't we seem to be able to talk about that, and then storing up all those things that you haven't been able to talk about satisfactorily, that then it reaches a kind of a boiling point, really, so that by the time people come for counselling, quite often what they say to you is, well, we can't talk about anything without arguing, we can't even put the bins out without arguing. And it's because all that communication pipe work has got really furred up with all the stuff that they just haven't been able to resolve. And that might be because they didn't complete the task of discussing them because it causes an argument, and so they don't come back to it because it's a tender spot. Or, as I said, it might be because of styles of communication that people have brought with them into the relationship that aren't very compatible or aren't conducive to constructive solutions, I suppose, really. So yeah, and communication, I think we often think about conflict if communication isn't good, and we think of that as arguing, but it can also be quiet. It can also be, the not talking and the dismissing and stopping people from expressing what it is they need to express to be able to express their needs. But yes, it's if we don't feel that we can feel heard in the relationship, we don't feel we can express our needs in the relationship, even if the other person can't solve that, but if we can't even express it, then that's a massive pressure on a relationship, and that's when we start to get into trouble.
Yeah. And like you touched on, people bringing those habits or already, I guess, self-beliefs or limiting beliefs from their journey so far, from their upbringing, their parents as well, their previous relationships. So it's all that baggage that you might not realize you've brought into that same relationship.
Yeah, we don't know we're bringing it. You're right. And, and the fact that we might have made meanings about ourselves and we've tried to manage that in certain ways, maybe in those early experiences. And of course, our earliest relationship is with our parents. It doesn't mean that they were bad parents, doesn't mean they did it deliberately. But, I suppose because, no relationship is absolutely perfect, there's always going to be some little gap where into which we've put a meaning about ourselves. Oh, well, there's something about that means I'm not worth it, or there's something about that means I should always have what I want, or there's something about that means that I need to be quiet. And so it doesn't have to be a massive problem in the relationship, but sometimes it plays a part. And so when people come for counselling, what they have an opportunity to do is to kind of discover that, if you like, and then to have a look at it and think, does it play a part that isn't helpful? Well, maybe it's helpful, don't know, but they get a chance to look at it anyway, and if you like, to understand the mechanics of the way their communication's working in the relationship.
Fascinating. When we think of having difficult conversations, and you mentioned this, what tips would you give for people to try and approach difficult conversations without making things worse?
Yes, yeah, well, we do. It's often one of the first things I'll do with a couple who's coming for counselling, because I want them to take the lid off the pressure cooker, if you like, between each other, while because obviously they've got a process of counselling to go through, but they don't want to be in that heated spot for the whole time. So we speak to them quite early about this, actually, Amy. In marriage care, and even in our marriage preparation, actually, we talk about the speaker listener approach to approaching difficult conversations, but it's an approach that many people use, and I was using it in my counselling before I was even with marriage care. The idea being that there are things we can do to help ourselves, not to set ourselves up to fail. So something I would always say to couples was 2 golden rules, really. One was, and this sounds really weird, okay, and it's only going to be if you're having difficulties and it's something difficult that you're wanting to approach, But I would say to my couples, make an appointment with your partner. Okay. I think all of us has probably experienced times where we're rushing off to do something, rushing off to work or whatever, and our partner chooses, you've timed it, okay, so because you know that you've got to be somewhere by a certain time, and your partner says, oh, do you know if we've got any carrots? Okay. Okay. And they don't get the best response, do they? I mean, you might not have a massive argument about that, but it doesn't usually go well, does it? And it's because it's thinking about, is this the right time? Yeah. So that's all I mean by making appointments, is don't set yourself up to fail by just saying, oh, I need to tell you that I'm really not sure I should be in this relationship anymore, just as they're about to serve dinner to your guests, or leave for the football match or whatever. Make an appointment, say, I want to talk to you. I think we need some time to talk about this. You let me know when might be good for you. And they might say, well, now's okay, if that's okay for you, but just at least give people the heads up that you need this conversation. So that's the first thing I say. And the second thing then that we all say is to do what we call speaking from I. Okay. So then when you approach that person, you say, I was wanting to speak to you because I'm feeling unsupported at the moment, or I'm feeling disappointed, or And the reason we say speak from I is because what do you think happens if you start with you?
Yeah.
Even before you've said anything else, okay?
Like you're attacking the other person.
So you've set yourself up to fail, because before you even start speaking, when they hear you, they aren't listening to you. They are constructing the case for the defense. Right? so it's sometimes it's a bit of a new one on couples to think, how, not just people come and say, oh, she never listens to me or whatever. I will say, how do you help your partner to be able to listen to you? Okay, so let's look at how we might do that. So I think if we do those things by saying, I need this moment, and speaking from I, that can help. Okay. And then, obviously there is a responsibility on the person receiving as well, that to listen, and to really listen without interruption, because that, again, because you might start well, and then if someone comes in and says, well, what about that day when you did this? End of constructive conversation and straight into an argument, because all the defenses, that's the thing that often makes constructive communication difficult, is that if we manage to arouse the defenses in one another. Okay. So the speaker listener approach is about trying not to do that. It's about avoiding things like interrupting the other person when they're speaking to you, to help them to feel that they've been heard by even saying back to them what you've just heard without any other comments, without using their words. Okay, so you're not adding any extra added value of your own into what you say. And equally, as the speaker, that you're speaking from I. You're not saying you. You're not saying you always do this or you never do that. What you're focusing on is how you feel. Okay, because it's much more difficult for people to have an argument about how they each feel, really. Whereas what we end up doing often is having an argument about events, what people did or didn't do or didn't say. So in brief, in summary, yes, there are ways, and it's something that in counselling you'd be helped to do.
Excellent.
Is how to diffuse that, how to try and make those conversations a bit more constructive. Yeah.
That's really, really useful tip, and I can definitely resonate with what you said. Sometimes, either I may have picked the wrong moment or Alex is picking the wrong moment. And I know over the years I've used the old, oh, what about this? And when you did that? And I'll dig back examples, and he will say, how do you remember all these things?
We all do that. We all do that, Amy. When you asked me about communication earlier on, what's happening there is all those bits, if you like, you've got a little collection jar of all the things that were never resolved, and they tend to come up. Okay. So if the communication doesn't go well, because they're just there waiting, they're tickled by the dispute, and they're sort of like, oh, this might be our moment, to burst forth. So
that is a good reminder. You've given some nuggets of how relationship counselling may play out for someone, but can you describe a little further how it actually works and what couples could expect from the process of going through relationship or marriage counselling?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think that, people do come with some expectations, and it might be better to start with those
Mm.
so that I can speak to them, because I think some couples come for couple counselling because they want someone else to impress upon their partner just how bad they are.
Oh,
Okay.
interesting. Yeah.
They're not going to get that. Okay. So
Mm.
if you're wanting to drag your partner along by the collar and have them told what a naughty girl or boy they are, that's not going to happen. Okay,
Mm.
so you'd be disappointed. Okay, I think the other thing that clients sometimes expect is that you're going to give them solutions, that you're going to tell them what to do, and they're not going to get that either. Okay, I mean,
Mm.
it may be that a strategy like I just mentioned about how we might listen better and everything, you might have your counsellor supporting you in that and introducing you to that idea. But generally speaking, we're not going to say, well, if you do that, well, what about if you did that? We're not going to
Mm.
do that, okay? Because people are better at creating change in their lives if they've come up with the ideas, because in the end, they're the ones who know the 360-degree truth of their lives. We just know what they're telling us in that 50-minute session.
Yeah.
So it's not for us to think we know how solutions would work in their lives, but if the clients know, so it's much better if they can come up with those. So you can
Yeah.
expect to do some work in your counselling session. Okay, you can expect to be listened to.
Mm.
Okay, and I think for some clients that's quite powerful, because sometimes they've gone a long time without feeling heard, and I
Mm.
think and that is sometimes the biggest agent of change, that they're feeling heard, and that maybe their partner's hearing them too. Yeah, because that's the other thing is that we do is to support them to hear one another. So I think you can expect that. People often come along and say, "Oh, am I going to have to talk about my childhood?" Okay. And the honest answer is probably. Okay,
Mm.
because as I've said earlier on, that if you're looking at communication as one of the main issues, it's worthwhile to just track back and just see what's gone on, and because what's gone on your journey, whether that's in childhood or whether that's in previous relationships, is likely to be informing what you're looking for in the relationship that you're in now. Okay, and the way that you're
Mm.
communicating about that. So the chances are yes, but it's not to blame anybody. Yeah, we have to remember that in the same way as we're just doing our best in the moment, our parents were doing the best they could on the whole. Of course, there will be exceptions. Okay, if we're talking about more serious issues, such as abuse and so on. But the vast majority of people are just doing the best they can with the resources they've got at that time, and it
Mm.
may not have gone well. It may have left people with bits and pieces that are difficult, but it wasn't because it was meant. Yeah, um,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, people perhaps shouldn't worry that it's going to be kind of bashing of their histories and their parents and so on, but probably they're going to be talking about that. But we get the feedback we get at marriage care from clients who've had counselling. They'll say things like, "It saved my relationship,"
Oh,
or
amazing.
"We're talking to each other about things in a way that we've never done before, or for the first time. Yeah, things feel easier." Yeah, so I would say, expect to do some
Mm.
work that might feel a bit hard sometimes, but also expect rewards. And actually, I think a really important thing to say, because this really is the core, the heart of what counsellors do, is that we're not going to judge you.
Mm.
You can tell us anything in that space. If you tell us something that makes us think that you or someone else might be at risk of harm, we might have to have a conversation about that, because we do have obligations, safeguarding obligations around that. But you can tell us anything in that space. It's confidential and we're not judging you.
Yeah. And when do you think is the right time for someone to seek counselling? Should it be as a last resort if the couple have been trying to work through things themselves, or is early intervention a better
Mm.
approach?
Yes. I mean, unfortunately, people tend to come to counselling when it's in crisis. Yeah, as I said
Mm.
earlier, by then, usually they can't communicate at all. Not always, but the
Mm.
vast majority of couples I see, all of their communication is conflict, it's not communication. And it's not to say that we can't turn that around, but obviously it's a very, very big piece of work. I
Yeah.
suppose as a couples counsellor, I'm bound to say, aren't I, that I think everyone should have couples counselling, even if you
Yeah.
think you're happy. I think, you give your car an MOT, don't you? I
Of
don't think there's any
course.
harm. You might not need loads of counselling, but I don't think there's any harm in doing a review. Whether you do it in counselling or whether you do it together, to think, okay, how do we think things are going? And it
Yeah.
might be that you go along to say to a counsellor, we'd like some help in being
Yeah.
able to we feel happy, but we want to think a bit about, we want to check that we're each happy, and we want to think about the future and how we get from here to there, how we get from here to 2028, and what our goals might be. So yeah, obviously the earlier the better, but the reality is that many people do wait until sometimes too late.
Yeah.
Something we see quite often, and I certainly see it quite often, and I don't mean to be discriminatory about genders here, but it tends to be that a couple will come along for counselling and the woman will already be like, I'm nearly gone.
Oh.
I've suggested counselling to him for over the last 2 years and he's always said no. And it's only because now I've made my decision that we're here. So obviously that could be either way round in terms of male, female, or if it's a same-sex couple, but it tends to be the way round that I've said. Okay, so
Yeah.
guys, okay, if your partner suggests counselling, do it when she suggests it.
Yeah.
Because if you leave it, the chances are it's already too late. And we do have people on our waiting list, when we contact them to say we've got a slot for you now, who'll say we've already split up.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
So
so
don't.
heartbreaking. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. So don't leave it till then.
Do you ever see some couples where you kind of, whether you feel it in your gut or whether you verbally say it, where you think, yeah, you're probably better just parting ways? Or do you feel everyone can be fixed if they work on it?
That's a really good question. I think it depends on whether, I think, it goes back in a way to some of the questions you've already asked me, Amy. What mindset are you coming to counselling in? Yeah. I think if you accept that you're going to have to do some work and you're open to change, then I think you can turn things around. Okay. Obviously, the longer you've left it, the harder you're going to have to work at that.
Yeah.
But I think you can. I think if I've ever had that feeling of it's been because I can see that people aren't on the same page or that they don't really want to change anything in any meaningful way. And sometimes, being able to action that change means doing some work on yourself, actually, because
Yeah.
sometimes it can be because people have brought really difficult things into the relationship that are from a life before. And that can be quite hard to face that sometimes. And sometimes people just can't. And if they can't face it in a timely way, can their partner wait any longer if things are really, really difficult? But the
Yeah.
only time I think that I would think this person actually needs to leave is if I think that there might be domestic abuse. But I would never, of course, you don't, it's up to, even in that
Yeah.
situation, it's up to victims to make that choice. Nobody can tell them
Yeah.
to leave. But that's the only time when I think, actually, well, I'd be thinking this isn't couple counselling because domestic abuse isn't a relationship issue. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Wow. I mean, that could be a whole nother episode in itself. And
Yes.
crikey, a very sensitive topic as well, isn't it?
Yes.
But I'll move on to the modern life that we perhaps live in and how attention is pulled and shared in every different way. But how has modern life and technology changed the way that we connect in relationships, do you
Yeah.
think?
Oh, massively. Absolutely massively, isn't it? I don't even know where to start. I mean, if you think about, we've been talking about communication. Let's start there,
Yeah.
okay? And so a lot of our communication is with texts and emails, which in some ways is really can be helpful,
Mm.
okay? But maybe sometimes we can be a bit too much in touch, so it creates other issues. So if for it's with WhatsApp, the blue ticks.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So you send your message to your partner, you see the two blue ticks, but they don't answer you. You
Yes,
know,
of course.
that's now in the olden days of, blackballs and chalk, if your partner was at work or whatever, they were just busy and you didn't expect to hear from them during the day really, unless there was an emergency. But because we've got this and we can immediately contact somebody, we expect them to be immediately available to respond as well. And when they don't, that can actually cause conflict. That could
Mm.
cause arguments. So that's just one example. I think also it's been a long time since I've worked with a couple who came to me about infidelity and
Mm.
that's actually been physical. It's
Mm.
often been because of the way one of them is interacting with somebody on social media, or they found text messages on the phone that they think sound a bit too intimate and cozy. So there's that thing too of what's on your phone. I've even had couples come to me for counselling because they noticed that their partner was liking the Facebook posts of an ex-partner, or they
Gosh,
come
yeah.
because someone didn't like something that they posted. So I mean, this is all at the lower end really of difficulties. And
Yes.
then you've just got the presence of the phone. So I know that that's a stress and a strain in couples. I know that in my own relationship, if I've got my phone, my husband can be quite, are you with me? What are you doing? Who is it? Because it's kind
Yeah.
of intrusive. It's like there's always this little open door in your space, isn't it?
Yeah.
Through which people can come and go all the time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I've read and come across this sort of thinking that, yeah, when you've got your phone on the table, whether it's in a meeting or at a restaurant in a social environment, I once read it, it's like, it's saying, this is more important than you.
Yeah.
I've kept this out in case I get a message or in case I get a call. And I do see, I personally don't have one, but the smartwatches that where you receive the notifications and a message or a call, and you're midway through speaking to someone and their wrist vibrates and they're immediately pulled into whatever pops up on their phone.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everyone's permanently on call, aren't they? I mean,
Mm.
it used to be that the only people who got those kind of bleeps were doctors because they
Yes.
literally had to go. Whereas now it's all of us, and it might just be over something like someone sending you a meme or something, but it still cuts across. It still cuts across the relationship.
Yeah.
And then we've also got, I know there are family pressures too, because I'm also a family counsellor. And if there are issues with the children and young people in a family, you'll know this as a parent, that can put pressure on the relationship as well. And if we start talking about young people and technology and the battle between their parents and them, that's another pressure actually. And I have had people come to me because of that, because they were trying to navigate their children's use of technology. So it's been a game changer, I think, in terms of in terms of just about everything. I mean, something I've said in my families and with couples too is that, okay, technology is part of our lives. In the same way as you're sitting in front of me because you want to decide what kind of relationship you want to have with each other, let's talk about what sort of relationship you want to have with your phone.
Yes.
Is it in charge, or is it, do you have choices? Are there boundaries? You have boundaries with your partner. There are times when you feel able to say no to your partner. Are there times when you can say no to your phone? So I think it needs talking about openly, especially if it comes up as an issue between people.
And have you seen through your work, different cultural or generational attitudes towards relationships and marriage?
Yes, but sometimes not necessarily in the way that you think.
Ah.
I mean, I think some of the younger generation are actually, they do have some quite strong values around relationships, actually, despite the way they're depicted, I would say. So it's not necessarily in the directions that you think, and equally, I know, I've come across people who are older who you might not expect to want to have multiple partners or use porn, but they do. Okay, so I wouldn't want to make sweeping generalizations. But there are some differences. I mean, I think one of the major ones is in the way people meet in the first place. Because there just aren't the same sort of in-person opportunities now that there used to be, and there is an expectation that if you're wanting to meet somebody, you're going to go onto a dating app. And that's very, very different. It's a whole different territory, and it's one that people of my generation don't know on the whole, unless you decide you're going to go on one, later in life. So it's challenging for all sorts of reasons. I've had quite a few clients who've met on an app, and of course the bit where you get to know each other that precedes the romantic relationship hasn't really happened, because the relationship's begun in a place of expectation of a romantic relationship, if you know what I mean. So it means that things happen in a slightly different order. So that's a challenge, and that's apart from just the challenge of the experience of being on those dating apps and what it can do sometimes to people's self-image, because it's brutal out there, I think, in many ways.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned this, because this was on the tip of my tongue to actually ask about your thoughts on, because I often get the impression it starts with very much based on, shall we say, people's looks, because it is the whole swipe left or right.
Yes.
Do you like the look of the person?
Mm.
And then obviously whatever they've written there, which you don't know how much of that is true or false. Do you see much evidence to suggest if a relationship would be successful or not if it was born out of a dating app?
Yeah, I've seen both. You know, I've seen relationships that are successful and that are continuing, but that's not surprising, really, is it? Because there is an element of luck in any relationship, however it begins. Yeah. So if you happen to pick the right straw, then there's no reason why it shouldn't work, really. But I managed to upset my husband recently, and I didn't mean it as a joke, but we did have a laugh about it. But I said to him, if we both went onto a dating app, do you think we'd get a match? Do you think we'd be matched?
This sounds like a dangerous question to open.
So we had a good laugh about it, but actually my point was a slightly more serious one, which was to say that probably we wouldn't. And yet, have we been married for 25 years, just about? You know, yes. Have we had a successful relationship? Yes. But the algorithms probably wouldn't work. Yeah. So
that is interesting.
So if you've only got the app as a means of sifting people, you're probably missing out on loads and loads and loads of people that you'd never be matched with, just because, you know, it doesn't happen to match in some ways. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't feel this is an experiment worth trying.
No,
if you were to say, let's put ourselves on and let's just see if we match, and then it's like going, shopping at the candy shop and seeing all the other options. What might start as a fun, innocent, oh, look at this person I've matched with. Obviously, that could start to trigger, it pique someone's interest. So, I am interested to get your thoughts on, obviously, Alex and I, we have worked together for a number of years now. But what unique challenges do you think couples face when they live and work together and their lives are quite intertwined?
Yes, I think there are challenges, aren't there? And obviously you work very closely together with Alex. I think a lot of people are sort of in a similar situation, even if you're not doing the same job as your partner, with the working from home. It means we are just with each other so much more. And I think in a way, what we were talking about earlier about phones, really there's a word that goes with that, and that's boundaries, isn't it? Okay, so it's about exploring what kinds of boundaries do you need to have in place to create balance in your life, given that you are together so much. When I was still working elsewhere, time together was really precious to us, and that we'd really sort of prioritize that. Really, our favorite thing to do when we weren't working was to do something together. Yeah, and I'm not saying I've gone off that, okay, but I think it's important to do things with other people. Actually, that I think that's something that people can find a bit hard to get their head around. They think that if you really love somebody, if you're in a relationship with them, it means you want to be with them the whole time. But doing things with other people, having some separate interests, means that you come back into the home with some fresh air. You've got something to talk about that isn't just about the joint project that you're working on, or isn't just about, the fact that you've been working upstairs and you've gone down and still no one's touched the washing up, or, you've got other things to talk about. So I think, having boundaries so that you do have time that's definitely time for you as a couple. And I think all couples could benefit from thinking about that. I think some of the little things sometimes disappear and we don't notice them going because we're just busy. It could be that, obviously if you're working together all the time, no one's leaving the house so that you don't get that kiss on the cheek before you go. Yeah. Or no one's coming back from work, so they're not bringing a bouquet of flowers with them on their way back. Or, whereas they might have done that in the past. Okay, little things. Doesn't have to be big things or expensive things, but those little things. Because what I say to couples, Amy, whether they're working together or not, is that if you really, those little bits, the things, and sometimes it's a really nice conversation to have with your partner, actually. So is there anything that we used to do in this relationship that you miss? Okay.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Because many of those things will have gone, not because you stopped loving each other, but just because life happens and you're busy and they're not the big things. So it can kind of slip. But it's those little things I say, as I was saying a moment ago, to my couples, that they are almost the mortar around the bricks of the house of your relationship. So if you have a trickier time like we had during COVID, or somebody becomes ill, or you've got some difficulties with your children or family or whatever, if you don't have, what do you think is going to happen to that relationship? It's not going to be as solid as it would be if you still had the really tiny, cheap little bits that you might miss in that mortar in between the bricks. So I think that's the advice I would offer up to anyone who's working together too, is to have that conversation, and see what you could reinstate that might have gone, and also explore what sorts of boundaries you might put in place.
That's great. Some great tips there. So I'm now going to ask you 3 questions from one of our packs of cards, and I've picked our Really Good Conversations for Kids, Volume 2.
Oh, great. Thank you.
I was almost wondering, could I ask her some questions from our couples pack? But I thought that could be a bit strange because we don't have a romantic relationship necessarily. But so I will ask you these 3 questions. Number 1, what is your favourite word?
Oh my goodness. Oh, I'm not sure actually. I have got one. I think it might be a French one though, because I speak French.
Oh.
I quite like hippopotame, which is the French for hippopotamus.
Yes, I like that.
But yeah, I'll probably think of loads of others afterwards. But yeah, hippopotame. You can all
well done with coming up with something on the spot. So I love that. I often like using the word discombobulated.
Oh yes, that's a good one. Yeah.
Question number 2: what 3 things would you take to a desert island and why?
Oh my gosh, am I allowed to take people?
If you want to.
Yeah, okay. I would probably take the grandchildren because they're very creative, aren't they? Children, about things to do. You just be lost in their world of what they're playing and everything, which would be fab. Yeah. I'd probably be quite happy on a desert island actually, as long as there's nothing vicious. So I probably wouldn't want much because sea and sand I love. Okay, so I'd just be enjoying that really, Amy. I don't know, what else would I miss? I suppose so I've got people to talk to. I might take something to make music with actually. I quite enjoy a little bit of steel pan actually. So I might do that, and then I'd be giving it the whole kind of Caribbean island vibe while I was there. So yeah, I think I might take that, because work on some tunes that I'm not very good at yet and stuff like that. So I think I might do that. I think making music would be good. Yeah. And yeah, that'd probably keep me going actually, because people often talk about books, but I think you can make up stories, can't you? Which is quite nice. So yeah, and if I've got the grandchildren there, there'd be no limit to stories. So yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. Anything for survival?
Oh,
I mean,
how practical. No, it sounds like I'm really wanting to go to that desert island. No, not really.
I mean, I appreciate. I didn't specify if this is you're stranded on this desert island or not. I did keep it. So it's interesting that you've gone down there. Yeah, I think, shall we say, the nice vibe, holiday vibe, relaxed vibe, less of the washed up, shipwrecked vibe.
Yeah, exactly that.
Fantastic. And question number 3. If you could be any age for a day, what age would you choose and why?
Oh, that's a really interesting question, isn't it? I think I wouldn't mind being maybe about 6. Yeah, just to go back to just being in the moment, aren't you, at that age? You're just in the moment. You've got no responsibilities. You're completely looked after. A day of being 6, I think that would give my brain a really good rest, actually.
Yes, fantastic. And the finishing question that I love to ask all of our guests is, if you could ask any person, dead or alive, a question, who would it be and what would you ask them?
Okay, there are so many choices here. Okay. I think I would go for Keir Starmer, okay,
Yeah.
who actually is exactly the same age as me. He's born on the same day even. Okay, I
Wow.
discovered. Yeah, so we're very similar, as you can see. But I think I would want to ask him what he feels about thinking more holistically and in a more joined up way about everything in our society.
Wow, yeah.
So there you go. That's why I need to be 6 for a day.
Yeah.
Then we'd just play, wouldn't we? Because we'd both be 6.
Exactly. Oh, that fantastic question. And yes, I think a lot of people would like to know the answer to that as well. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Michelle. It really has been fantastic. Where can people find out more information about yourself, connect with you, or as well about marriage care?
Yeah, you will find me and Marriage Care on LinkedIn. And Marriage Care, we have a website too. So if you just Google Marriage Care, you'll find
Yeah.
us. Yeah, and we do post on LinkedIn. We do post some relationship tips and work-ons regularly. So look out for those. You might find some helpful tips there. And
Brilliant.
I guess I also give a shout out to 1+1, who is one of our partners in the Relationship Alliance, and their focus is research actually. So they have a lot of evidence-based resources. Their real interest is the impact of couple relationships, co-parental relationships on and children. So the impact managing communication so that we get better outcomes for children. And in partnership with them, we actually have some resources that we provide to our clients who are signing up for counselling that they can look at while they're on our waiting list. So really attractive resources. So I'd give a shout out to them.
Brilliant. And I'll include some links in the show notes as well so that people can have a closer look as well.
Yeah, thank you. And then finally, just the Gottman Institute, because I think a lot of the things I've talked about today, they provide a lot of tips too, and a lot of it's come out of research from John and Julie Gottman and associates. So yeah.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. Thank you so much again for everything you've shared. It's been great speaking to you.
Great to speak to you as well, Amy. You take care and good luck with all your projects.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Be sure to check out the show notes for more information on today's guests. And if really good conversations are your thing, hit subscribe and join us next time for more business journeys, insights and banter.